Yeah, it's been great. So, we did a pilot budget with you all just to test it out. Like a lot of startups, we don't have a ton of budget to work with. So, we wanted to throw a little bit at that and see what sort of traction we'd get. We've got, definitely one hire on the books. We have another just pending. Speaking of the new graduation and new graduate, kind of targeting that you mentioned, this person is clear to be hired, but we just are waiting for them to have their master's. So that's a second hire. And then, yeah, we have several more who are in process. I would say the experience has been great, especially working with you all to fine tune, and really getting good engagement, and a relationship between us to be able to figure out, okay, maybe these aren't the best candidates. What can we tweak? What can we change? That has been really helpful. Sometimes you sort of get some stuff out of the box and they don't really want to do a lot of help to make sure that it's going to actually work and be successful. So that has been really helpful to be able to give feedback. It was a really quick process for us. So I think it did help, especially in the clinical space. We have a really good idea of our candidate profile. It's an evergreen requisition. So we can pretty quickly fill out the kind of intake form that you have. So getting up and running was pretty fast. And at least for us, being an earlier stage startup and also being one of the few companies that does offer supervision where we have capacity, we're really open to talking to a lot of folks. So for us, we don't see it as a lift because it's all about like employer branding. We're having just engagement conversations, even with some folks who maybe didn't meet all the criteria, but might in the future. So we still saw those conversations as wins, even if they weren't immediate hires. So yeah, I would say that it was a pretty quick process. I think once we, paid for our pilot and filled out the form, things were up and running within a few days. So, it takes a little bit of time to get some candidates trickling through, but I think we had some first folks within like the first week. I think it's been a really good supplement. And for me as a leader, my goal when I'm looking at like building top of funnel, which is the big focus for clinical, I always joke with you, Peter, I want a martini glass, right? When I'm looking at my funnel, I want a ton of top of funnel activity for clinical. What was really nice with Hireline is I don't think we had any overlap. So ideally, I want to fill the gap. I don't want to just overlap with what we're already doing through Indeed and LinkedIn. We use Gem, and are playing around with a little bit of Seek Out as well, which is also like a direct sourcing tool. But Hireline doesn't necessarily touch those same candidates. So, we've got 5 in process right now, folks, and 3 of those are doing a second round. So there's a good chance that we could extend an offer. 2 offers pending are accepted, and 2 more folks at TA stage. So that's pretty good considering we did a fairly small pilot with you all. There was very little overlap, which was a big question for me too when we were considering you all as a tool. I don't really want to pay money for a candidate that I'm going to end up outreaching anyway, right? No, exactly. I run into that with agency work when I'm paying a placement fee, paying an arm and a leg for a placement fee. And then we find out sometimes that we already had outreached that candidate. So, there's often a lot of overlap in some of these really expensive options. And I see Hireline as a great way to just increase the candidate flow and activity. For us, we'll kind of turn it on a few times a year because that's just what works with our budget. But I could see a lot of organizations seeing value in like having this on throughout the year, just to kind of inject more activity. Not a lot other than, I think it's definitely worth the effort for folks who struggle with building top of funnel. So specifically clinical recruiting, I could see a lot of value in other like high volume evergreen or folks that are looking for entry level positions that they just need to inject more volume. And then I guess my word of caution to all folks and for a lot of TA leaders, this is just preaching to the choir, but pulling the trigger on these things earlier rather than later, because you're always going to need more time to get those folks in the seat, make sure you actually can let the campaign run. We were fine, but I definitely would have loved to be able to start, and that's not any fault of yours. It's just the nature of getting budget approval, but would have loved to start the Hireline campaign, a few weeks or even a month earlier than we did. But still happy with the results that we got.